Hello, welcome back. We're going to start with chapter 2 now of Isaiah.
And I'm going to read. The word that Yeshayahu, the son of Amoz, saw concerning Yehuda and Jerusalem. And it shall be in the later days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways. And let us walk in his paths, for out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples, and he shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. We're going to stop right there for a minute, and we're going to talk about some things. Go ahead.
Well, the first one is, going back, and he's going to teach us of his ways, because we went too many of man's ways. And we went away from the law and the Torah.
Yes. And one thing I just noticed, it says in verse 2 of chapter 2, it says, And it shall be in the later days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. And I thought of, if you watch the I Am But a Worm, about the crimson worm, one of the things, I can't really tell you everything, you have to watch it, but it does show the cross and what it symbolizes. But when it showed it, the thing that I thought of right away is north, south, east, and west. And this is talking about, and it shall be in the later days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. I'm wondering, I'm not saying I'm correct or anything, I could be wrong. I'm wondering if he is going to be the center of everything, and no matter the four corners of the earth, north, south, east, and west, he's going to call all the nations, and we're going to gather to him in that center spot where he dwells, because he is the center of our life. That's what I am getting out of this. If you have a comment and you think different, please let us know, because we want everybody's opinion on what we are studying, so we all can understand as a group and learn more together as a family.
Yes. And I also want to comment in on, and they shall beat the swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. When they left Mitzrayim, Egypt, they were slaves. They learned over the 40 years that they were in the wilderness how to become warrior tribes. Because to come into the promised land, it says right there, there was the Philistines, the giants. So, but the problem is, once they got there, they didn't become settled down and the farmers. They kept attacking and plundering and doing the wrong things. If you take and make the sword into a plow, you can feed your enemy. With it as a sword, what do you do with your enemy with it? And I think God is telling us we need to laid down all this anger and hatred and slaughtering not just the animals but of the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Okay. Shall continue to verse 5. O house of Yaakov, come and let us walk in the light of Yahweh. My husband said it perfectly just a few seconds ago. We are to be the light. We are supposed to shine with love. For you have forsaken your people, the house of Yaakov, because they have been filled from the east and practice magic like the Philistines. There's that idol worshiping. And they are pleased with the children of foreigners. They mingled. And their lands is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. And their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. And their land is filled with idols. They bow themselves to the work of their own hands, to what their own fingers have made. And the lowly bows down, and the high is humbled. Therefore you do not forgive them. Enter into the rock and hide in the dust, because the fear of Yahweh and the splendor of his excellency. The lofty looks of man shall be humbled, the pride of men shall be bowed down, and Yahweh alone shall be exalted in that day.
Hallelujah.
Amen. For Yahweh of hosts has a day against all that is proud and lofty, against all that is lifted up so that it is brought low, and against all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and against all the oaks of Bashan. We're going to stop right there for a minute too, because cedar wood, insects do not like cedar wood. You don't see a lot of insects in buildings that are made of cedar. My grandparents' house was made from cedar. They built it from cedar wood. There wasn't a lot of insects in that house. And it says, and against all the oaks of Bashan, and oaks are strong. They're resilient to stuff. And I'm thinking, these woods that are the best woods, they're going to be gone.
Speaking of the wood being gone, in England, back in the old days of the man of war ships, they built 1,825 of these ships. Each one took 1,700 oak trees that were over 200 to 250 years old. Now, we're talking millions of trees just to build that armada of one kind of ship for war. I think Seneca said it, swept to the war, the lumber, the land. Because the problem is they also didn't replant the trees. They just cut them down and moved on. We've had to learn to reforest our properties too, though, but we learn.
Verse 14 of Isaiah chapter 2. And against all the high mountains, and against all the hills that are lifted up, and against every lofty tower, and against every strong wall. I'm thinking of some pretty strong walls that are still out there, and against all the ships of Tarshish, and against all the desirable craft. And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the pride of men shall be brought low, and Yahweh alone shall be exalted in that day, and the idols completely pass away. stop right there and talk?
No, I think we're okay to continue
Okay.
for a little bit.
And they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth from dread of Yahweh and the splendor of his excellency when he arises to shake the earth mightily. In that day man shall throw away his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they made each for himself to worship, to the moles and bats. When I think of moles, they live underground in the dark. They like dark places, and they eat worms. And bats, they live in caves, and they live in dark places too, and they eat insects. So it's like they're creatures that live in dark. They like the dark, but they eat things that are unclean. So they're like unclean. They're you don't wanna. They're unclean. They're unholy. Do you have anything to say about that, or?
Well, more about the idols.
The idols.
To nowadays, there are so many idols out there. Have you ever heard anybody say, I just cannot start my day without my Starbucks coffee? And every day they get that coffee and they will not do things. I've seen people sit in an office and sip on their coffee until the coffee's done, and then they start working on the clock. They're literally robbing their employer while they're taking pleasure in their own idols.
It can be anything. It could be even cell phones, games, whatever. If you make it more important than God. He talked to me not long ago how I need to quit doing makeup again and wearing jewelry, and I stopped. I really am trying not to do those, because as people to God, we are to be set apart and holy. The makeup thing will be a different topic, and we'll talk about that later. But I just find it really interesting how anything that we use on a daily basis, if we take our eyes off, if it's going to take our eyes off of God, that can be an idol. So, 21 and 22, to go into the clefts of the rocks and into the crags of the rugged rocks, because of the fear of Yahweh and the splendor of his excellency when he arises to shake the earth mightily. It's probably going to be so bright when he comes that the light is going to be like a terrifying light to some people or many people, and they won't recognize us, the believers. We'll know what it is. 'Cause he's going to arise to shake the earth mightily. It's going to be a terrifying, dreadful day. Yes. So many people think, I can't wait for God to come, for Yeshua to come, and Jesus, and it says it's going to be a dreadful day, a day of darkness, and it's not going to be a pleasant day. Like, it's just not. It's not. Cease from man, whose breath is in his nostrils. For in what is he to be reckoned upon? And that's the last verse. And to me, that's saying, like, leave man behind. Follow Yeshua. If he's dead, let the dead bury the dead. Because at that point, there's no hope. I mean, he's here. Are we watching for him? We've got to be constantly watching for him, constantly ready. What are you doing? What are the things that he wants you to do, and do it? It's difficult. Yes, it's hard. But we got to get back.
There is a reward, though.
There is a reward for doing what is right.
But when he does that, you've got to think of all the friends and family members who are on the fence or on the other side of the fence. You know, maybe you're doing the right thing and you don't have much to worry about, but there's going to be a day of loss because not everybody in your family believes the way you do. Not everybody in your family has a relationship with God and Yahshua the way you do. Not everybody in your family can even forgive things of the past. And it says there is no entering heaven without forgiveness, which I also find interesting because, you know, we go back to chapter 2, verse 9, and the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself, therefore forgive them not. These people have actually committed such heinous sins against God that he's like, even you're not supposed to forgive them. I'm not going to forgive them. They're going to be cleaned and they're going to be purified and they're going to be removed from the pure.
And like we said, please comment, because so we can get input, so we can learn from one another. Let us know what you get out of this.
And help us grow.
And help us grow, and we can help one another grow.
So we're going to go ahead and end it with chapters 1 and 2 today. We'll be back very soon with 3 and 4. We're going to do them in blocks of 2. That way we can actually have some discussion. But like she said, please leave a comment. That way we can understand what you're thinking. Maybe we don't have it quite right. Maybe we do have it right. Either way, we'd like to know.
Yes, most definitely.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.